his life for a wonderful human being, Dr. Goldberg. Those of us that knew Dick, talking to him, he did not really want to celebrate the world. There was a number of us that got together and said, the man with Dick's caliber could not go off into the sunset without recognition. So, I first met Dick about 30 years ago. I saw him at his house. I found him to be very intelligent, compassionate, caring, gentle, humble. I'm sure the attributes and the adjectives can go on and on and on, but he was certainly one of a kind. And everybody in here, I see all these faces, all are Idyllwild people and people that moved off the hill, but it's just so gratifying to see all you folks come to celebrate this man's life. He was just a wonderful man. So one thing about Dick, anytime that I would see him for the most part, he'd come over and say, "How are you doing?" It was always about you. It wasn't about Dick. That was just his demeanor. And he'd always say, "Well, I think, why don't we take a look at that?" And I tell you, I think one time Dick actually saved my life. I was going down the freeway, and all of a sudden, for no apparent reason, my leg starts swelling, my left leg. I said, "Well, that's kind of odd. I wonder if I have a bug bite." About 3 days later, my leg is still swollen. It was a Friday night. I remember very well. It was about 6 o'clock at night. I'm in my sweats. Susie and I are just kind of hanging out there. And I called Dick. I said, "Dick, I got this situation." And he said, "Well, I'm eating dinner. I'll come right back." I said, "No." I said, "Why don't you just wait till tomorrow? I really appreciate it." And half hour later, there's Dick. He looks at my leg. He said, "Pete, you need to go to the emergency like now. Saddle up." So we saddle up with the emergency room, get in there, and they give me an ultrasound on my leg. Came back negative. So we spent the night down at the desert, came back, called Dick the next day. I said, "Dick, they didn't find anything." He said, "Pete, you go back there, you tell them you get another ultrasound or you want to see a vascular surgeon." So I tell this to the nurse, and of course she rolls her eyes. She said, "You were just here 2 days ago." I said, "This is what my friend who's an emergency room physician, who's retired, told me." "Okay, well, sure enough, they find a clot." It was a clot. I mean, it could have killed me. And had Dick not been such an advocate and pushed me to do this, you know, you may not see my smiley face up here now. So, but that was Dick. I mean, that's just the way he was. And I'm sure we'll hear all the stories today of all the people that he's helped and was concerned about. And just, you know, he's such an unassuming guy. And like I say, it was a real blow to all of us, a real loss. It was part of the fabric of this community. And like I say, they didn't come any better than Dick. I mean, if you want to say somebody, talk about a person who when he was born, they broke the mold, Dick was definitely that man. He was a good guy. So now I want to bring up Vic Serkin, and Vic, as well as his wife Kate, spent the last couple of weeks of Dick's life with him, visiting him in the nursing facility when he was dying, and they were there every day. So Vic has a lot of things to talk about, and it's very emotional for him. So if he needs a little break, please bear with him. But they became really, really good buddies. I mean, when the Goldbergs moved down to Sun City, where Vic and Kate lived, they really became close. I mean, they would play chess, they would go bowling, they would play cards. So they really became good friends. And that friendship, for Vic, I mean, it was very rewarding. The same thing for Dick. They both came from Chicago, and they had a lot of similarities about the city. But Kate and Vic were really there, real troopers for him until the day he passed away back in May 28th. Anyhow,
there was almost no point in my saying anything since he took half of my speech away. But, it's wonderful to see that we counted correctly, and so many of you familiar faces I haven't seen for really so long. And I must tell you that my wife and I have had many regrets about moving to the desert. And just I didn't really realize how many people I truly miss. Obviously, being able to spend a lot of time with Dick was very, very, very important to me. And you'll hear more from me in a little bit, but the first thing we're going to do, Dick had two lovely sisters. One lived in Richmond, Virginia. Her name was Barbara. She was the older of the two sisters. They were both younger. And his other sister's name was Rochelle, and she was in Chicago. I've gotten to know them very well recently and been in touch with them. And one is struggling with the health situation. The other one is simply not available and is out of town. But the younger one, Rochelle, had written Dick a letter back in April when he was starting to, when his disease was starting to really become a problem. And she asked if we would read that letter and his response. So instead of me reading that letter, I've asked my wife, Kate, to read the letter and share a couple comments about Dick. And so I'm going to have Kate come up here right now and read that letter for you.
So we are here to celebrate the life of a great human. And it is my philosophy that all the people we've been fortunate to have in our life, even after their departure, are still part of us. And Dr. Dick is truly one of those. His gifts will be part of all of us forever. I have been given the honor of sharing a letter written to him by his younger sister just months before his death. Dear Dick, thank you for your call on my birthday. I'm so sorry you are going through this painful life passage at the end of such a productive and meaningful life. In your present condition, rather than draining you with a phone call, I thought it might be best to write you a letter so you can read it when you have the energy. From my earliest memories, I have been either proud of your accomplishments or imagining myself the object of your disappointments. In my very young days, you wanted to take blood from me with your chemistry set for medical science. And then in parentheses, she says, glad to think I might actually have been of useful service. Concealing your frustration at having sisters instead of brothers with whom you'd be able to put together a baseball team, you taught me how to slide into third base and made me memorize the entire White Sox lineup when I was 5. In high school, I remember you working as an orderly at Jackson Park Hospital and getting a call to see if you would like to see an autopsy. You ran right over in the middle of the night. You hitchhiked through the country selling photos of kids on ponies. You talked your way into a presidential convention, lived for a week with friends around Bughouse Square listening to poetry and jazz. The cat you dissected was a popular fixture in our basement. Even when Cousin Lori took the cat's brain out of the jar of formaldehyde thinking it was gefilte fish. When you went to Washington University, you brought home a visiting Russian academic for a week. We couldn't get any information out of him, but I'm sure he took notes on us. When you graduated medical school, you placed a personal ad in the paper thanking Ray Charles for gifts granted. For years after, your life as a doctor was a mystery until we watched the documentary film Code Black, when I finally understood the deep calling and constant intensity of your work and appreciated your ability to compartmentalize the daily trauma and stress confronting you to maintain your cool, calm demeanor and your great sense of humor. Your first love was medicine, but if you couldn't be a doctor, you said you wanted to be a second baseman in the Negro Leagues. Lucky for us, they didn't integrate the Negro Leagues. During your practice, you treated thousands of patients and received a Lifetime Achievement Award that I just found out about. Whether it was at County Hospital, New Orleans, or Guatemala, sleeping on floors and performing surgery in rooms with no windows or air conditioning, without complaint or apparent discomfort. You said that your residency had trained you to get sleep wherever and whenever you could. It was clear that it was exhausting but gratifying work for you, or if you didn't think of it as work, simply your life's ambition and goal to help others. In retirement, your insatiable curiosity led you to study a variety of subjects outside of medicine, even hiring tutors to explain the importance of areas you had trouble appreciating, like modern classical music or the deciphering of Joyce's Ulysses. We have always been grateful for your visits and for helping grow Richard's college fund, taking an interest in him and his music, even listening to Eminem, something his mother wouldn't attempt. The kindness and respect you showed our family, especially Dad, was always thoughtful and patient. I hope in your reflections on your life you have no regrets. Without question, you deserve the Lifetime Achievement Award for a life well lived and loved. We will think of you often for all your meaningful contributions to our lives. Love, Rochelle. And then she says, P.S. Thank you for calling me Mess in those long ago base running games. I hope I lived up to the name. And then Dick's response. Hi, Rochelle. Thank you for such a beautiful note. I don't have the energy to respond in kind, but I deeply appreciate your words. You were always the shining star of the family, very deserving of the love we all have for you. I feel so fortunate to have had you as my sister. Much love, Dick.
Thanks, Kate. You did great. You know, for those of you who know me, I tend to kind of go on a little bit. So I'm going to go on a little bit. Dick was 10 years my senior, but yet we had shared a somewhat parallel existence. We both grew up on the south side of Chicago in a middle-class Jewish family. We both attended the University of Illinois in Chicago, and we both moved west as young men, and both ended up in Idyllwild in 1995. And that is where we actually met when Pete introduced us. Dick was a brilliant physician, and I was grateful that Idyllwild now had a real ER doc on our hill. He joined my little gym in 2012, and he worked out every single day until COVID shut down the gym and Kate's yoga studio in 2020. Like many seniors, my wife and I moved to Palm Desert for medical reasons. Driving up and down in the winter for doctor appointments was often challenging. Dick also had medical issues of his own and had been considering the move off the hill himself for quite a while. We spoke of it often while on the treadmill. After Kate and I were settled in Sun City, we had them over for brunch. He loved the community, he loved the landscape, and the very well-equipped gyms, the golf courses, the clubs, the wildlife, and all of the available activities. And of course, the incredible selection of restaurants and a myriad of things to do. He prevailed in getting Jan to give it a try. So they sold their Idyllwild home and moved to Sun City to a home mere blocks away from Kate and I. Having Dick as a neighbor was the best thing I could ever hope for. He was immediately back at the gym daily, and we all went out for dinner several times a week. He had a passion to eat strange and very unusual foods. We played chess and gin rummy several times a week. He got us to go bowling, and he even hired a bowling coach. He hired a golf pro. We played bocce ball, we shot billiards, played ping pong, and he putted competitively. He was a rabid Cubs fan. He loved to travel and enjoyed museums and would even go alone if necessary. He loved classical music and enjoyed the LA Philharmonic. He would travel to areas of disasters to donate his services as a physician, generally under very difficult circumstances. He was a very competitive sportsman, and he ran in the LA and Boston marathons. He always wanted to learn to cook, so we barbecued together. We also went camping in my trailer and made beef stew, and then sat around the campfire and talked about the universe and the likelihood of extraterrestrial life. The onset of aggressive Parkinson's was soon beginning to limit his activity. He tried every possible conventional treatment and even some unconventional treatments. He was determined to beat it. He had always led a very busy life, and he wasn't about to quit. Among his other accomplishments, he was one of the original pioneers of emergency room medicine. He was also a professor. Dick was a true hero in every way. Dick had an amazing sense of humor. He was both gentle and a gentleman. I have personally witnessed him perform minor surgery on his living room couch for someone in Idyllwild who had no insurance. He recognized just how medically underserved Idyllwild really was. His sister told me he played the piano as a youth. He even hired a tutor at one point to teach him how to better appreciate classical music. He was a lover of jazz. While in high school, he would visit the local hospital to watch autopsies and emergency treatments. The doctors took him under their wings. He was very active in Idyllwild clubs, Science Club, Chess Club, among others. He even did some stand-up comedy at Cafe Aroma during the years when Frank Farrow was guiding the ship. I'm sure my list is not nearly complete. We were planning to go visit the Four Corners area to Indian country together, but we just ran out of time. The four of us had become fed up with the desert heat and were researching other areas to relocate. But again, the time was running out. In the last few months, we were limited to playing chess and gin rummy tournaments several times a week between medical appointments. His health was failing, and ultimately he required hospice. He chose not to receive visitors as he didn't really have the energy to try to socialize or the desire to endure lingering or sad goodbyes. Kate and I were very grateful and honored that he would continue to visit with us since we had all been so used to being together on such a very regular basis for the 2+ years Dick and Jan lived in the desert. There was absolutely nothing wrong with his chess skills, however. He beat me soundly almost every time, and yet he always complimented my game. He was kind, modest to a fault, and generous. He bailed Kate and I out of medical issues more than once. Dick spent his last week in a beautiful private facility with lovely people there to care for him. Kate and I visited him for hours every day. He had lost his ability to speak. He was on medication to make him more comfortable. We knew he never wanted to be bedridden. We held his hands, and I asked him if he could hear me, and if so, to squeeze my hand. He squeezed it. I then asked him if he could really understand me, and he squeezed it again. We were still connected. The TV in his room was always left on with scenes of beaches or baseball or golf by the nurses there. The non-stop spiritual music they played constantly, I was quite certain was not to his liking. So I turned the volume off. Then I turned my phone onto the classical station, and the Brandenburg concertos were on. I could see clearly in his eyes that he approved. We had found a way to communicate. A few days later, when I was getting ready to head over to see him in the morning, they called me from the facility and told me Richard had passed peacefully that morning. I knew now he was finally at peace. I think about him every day. I loved him, and I will miss him until my time is up. Dick was more than a friend. He was like a brother and a father as well. He is survived by two lovely sisters, Barbara from Richmond and Rochelle from Chicago. I've gotten to know them quite well in recent weeks. They are very special to me now. I'd like to share an item of interest. Most of you know Dick was never prone to boast or even talk about himself. He was always interested in asking others about themselves and their health, of course. A little-known fact was that Dick's family hailed from Sipsey, Alabama. His grandfather was a tiny man, but like Dick, had a big heart. He was awarded the position of sheriff by the locals who could count on him for supplies when they had little or no money. This tiny mining town and the mining companies they all worked for did not make for an easy life. Dick's sisters told me the sheriff kept his badge, his gun, and his false teeth in a safe as opposed to wearing them. And one last thing. Dick was a Lincoln scholar, as well as a collector of Lincoln memorabilia. If you'll notice, the two quotes of Abraham Lincoln's inaugural addresses on the backside of the memorial card you received, you will realize their continued relevance today. These quotes were very special to Dick. For those of us who had the honor to know him, we can be certain that the better angels of his nature will continue to guide us. Thank you all for the time to share some of my experiences with Dick. I think of him every day. Tom and Karen Higgins were two of Dick's dearest friends. At this point, I'd like to ask Tom to come up and share his thoughts. Following Tom, you will hear from Mike Fader and Gigi Kramer, friends who worked together with Dick with mountain disaster preparedness.
Wow. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's amazing. I thought Dick had a lot of friends, but there's a lot of folks here. So welcome to our celebration of the life of a dear friend and neighbor. Dick was an amazing man. He was a brilliant physician. He was a scholar. He wrote all kinds of medical journals that appeared in prestigious medical publications. He was an incredible, amazing man. Dick loved music, he loved art, he loved the outdoors, but most of all, he loved people. Karen and I had the pleasure of knowing Dick for over 2 decades. And we entertained Dick and Jan in our home, and they entertained us in their home. And we traveled all over with them, and we hiked all over these mountains in Idyllwild. We also hiked in the Eastern Sierra. We hiked in Yosemite. We hiked in Death Valley. He was quite an individual. But one of the things that I noticed about Dick, and Vic just alluded to it, he never talked about himself. So in 20 years, I didn't really know some of the wonderful accomplishments that Dick had. So what I did the day before yesterday, Karen's brother is also an emergency room physician. And not only is he an emergency room physician, he was a student of Dick's from 1988 to 1992. And so we had a long talk about Dick, and I asked him to tell me some things about Dick. And what he said was, first of all, what does it take to become a board-certified emergency physician? It's a long journey. First of all, there's 4 years of college. Then there's 4 years of medical school. Then there's 1 year as an intern. And then there's another 4 years of residence. Dick was one of the first residents at USC. USC started their emergency room program in 1973, and Dick was one of the first residents. And it was a wonderful program that was the leading program in the country. But Dick didn't leave USC after he graduated. He continued on at SC, and he became a full clinical professor. Now, that's quite an accolade, because when you teach at a university, you can be an adjunct professor, you can be an assistant professor, you can be an associate professor. Dick was a full professor, full clinical professor. Now, I don't know what kind of money full professors make, but I know what Dick made: nothing. He volunteered his time, and he was on the faculty of USC for a very long time. And because of that, he was awarded a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Medical School of the University of Southern California. Imagine what it would be like to be an emergency room doctor. You don't have the ability to say to your patient, "Take 2 aspirins and call me in the morning. You've got to stop the bleeding now. You've got to fix a broken bone now." If you're at County Hospital in Los Angeles, you've got to deal with a knife wound. You've got to deal with a bullet wound. You've got to deal with a broken body that's had either a car accident or a motorcycle accident. It's a very tough way to make a living. So what Dick did, he knew that it was a difficult way of practicing medicine, so he wrote a number of very, very interesting articles for professional journals, but he did more than that. He started wellness programs for fellow emergency room doctors, and he helped doctors, and he decreased the turnover rate and the burnout rate of doctors significantly. One of my favorite authors is a man by the name of Henry David Thoreau. And I like him because he talks about the outdoors, and I love the outdoors. That's why I'm in Iowa. And Henry Thoreau would say how wonderful it was to walk in the woods and how nurturing nature was. But he said something else that really reminded me and resonated with our friend Dick Goldberg. He said, and listen carefully, he said, "It isn't what you look at that matters, it's what you see." And when Dick came to Idyllwild, of course he was blown away by the beautiful mountains and the lush forests and the abundant wildlife. But when Dick came to Idyllwild, what he saw was an opportunity to help a small town that was underserved medically. And he did exactly that. And what he got in return was an award from the county supervisors, the county of Riverside, a wonderful award for his ability to turn around a little town with no medicine to a town that had at least a much significantly better medication. That's what Dick did. But he didn't do that only in Idyllwild. What he saw when there was a disaster in the Philippines, or in Haiti, or in New Orleans, he saw an opportunity to help people. And so he went to some very distant, dangerous places to help other people. He told me one time, he never would tell me what he did, But one time he told me a story that I thought was typical of Dick. He said he was in New Orleans, and as you know, they had a terrible disaster in New Orleans, Hurricane Katrina. And Dick was helping a young girl, 9-year-old I think, fixing lacerations on her arm. And he kiddingly said, "This is going to cost you a nickel." And with her big brown eyes, she looked at Dr. Goldberg and said, "Doctor, I don't have a nickel." And so he gave her $1. That was Dick Goldberg. You know, some people come into our lives and they leave quickly. And other people stay a while and they leave their footprints in our hearts and in our minds, and we will never be the same for having known them. And I submit to you today that all of us are better and different because of the fact that we knew Dick Goldberg. Now, when Vic was treating, and G.G. Kramer helped as well, Dick in his final journey from life, I sent Vic to give to Dick an Irish blessing. And this Irish blessing has been in my family for 4 generations. And if I give this blessing to my grandchildren, which I intend to do this week, it'll be 5 generations. And I'd like to share that Irish blessing with you. May the raindrops fall lightly on your brow. May the soft winds freshen your spirit. May the sunshine brighten your heart. May the burdens of the day rest lightly upon you. And may God enfold you in the mantle of His love. I truly believe that Dr. Richard Goldberg is up in heaven, and good Lord has him in the mantle of His love. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Idyllwild.
Good morning.
Dick Goldberg touched all of us personally. I'm here to talk about Dick's commitment to this community. He was a member of many groups, and he participated in many organizations. But we were fortunate, we, Mountain Disaster Preparedness, to enjoy Dick's passion in regard to safeguarding this community from what he saw as a potential happening for all of us. You recognize we sit on a second active earthquake fault in California. He recognized the threat of fire. He recognized that we had 2 ways in and 2 ways out. He recognized that we were lacking a hospital or a real medical facility here in town. For those reasons, Dick was one of the founding presidents of Mountain Disaster Preparedness. And he was instrumental in building the infrastructure that we have now. Our disaster aid stations, our communication network, our medical group, our CERT activity. Dick was in the beginning of all of that. It was mentioned just a minute ago that Dick volunteered for some challenging service with the Red Cross. He went to Katrina. He went to Haiti. I heard he went to the Philippines. I wasn't aware of that. Dick was that sort of citizen that was there for communities. not just individuals, but entire communities. He served in New Orleans for 2 weeks, I think longer in Haiti, and he came back with a commitment to our community that an organization like ours, Mountain Disaster Preparedness, had a role. And that role was to educate us all in terms of the need to be prepared and to provide service when needed to support this community in a disaster. I'm going to tell you a little story about Dick and MDP. I was a new president and I was new to the Hill. Dick had taken me under his wing and told me his experiences in both of those areas, Katrina and Haiti, and what he saw from a community that came together in support of the FEMA and the local government, but how the community came together and the important role that that played. And Dick's conviction that we had the same need and the same group here on the Hill. I was about 5 months into the first term of president when I got a telephone call. And the call was from one of our sponsoring agencies, the Emergency Management Department of Riverside County. And they requested a meeting. And didn't say what it was, just that they wanted to come up and meet with Mountain Disaster Preparedness. So I, not knowing what was going to be the result or what the meeting was even for, I asked Dick, I asked Gigi, I asked another board member to join me and to meet with the group. We were sitting in the room, the MDP bunch, when Riverside County came in. And they came loaded. They came in with a director and with 6 managers of the emergency department of Riverside County. And we were kind of surprised. This is a big deal, I guess, big meeting. It didn't take long for their mission to be understood. They saw Idyllwild and Mountain Disaster Preparedness as a independent cowboy organization on the Hill. And they were concerned that there needed to be more control of the group. Took us all by surprise and shock. Came right down to them saying that they wanted our medical group to report to Riverside County, our communications group to report to Riverside County, our CERT teams to report. Took the whole organization apart. And I was shocked. And to be honest with you, pretty defensive. Now, Dick Goldberg has a personality that is very unique. Dick sat there and didn't say a word. He looked at me, looked at Gigi, no emotion, calm. And when it came time for them to hear us, Dick took over the meeting. And in his normal way, a man of few words, he explained to Riverside County why we were what we were. He explained how we were unique. He explained how we were not cowboys. He explained how we understood our role in terms of support of them. And he related to them his experiences in New Orleans, Haiti, maybe the Philippines, and how it takes not just government and all the bureaucracy that is government. It takes people on the ground that know the community, know the people, know what needs to be done in order to safeguard the welfare of a large group of people. That was Dick Goldberg. Dick saved our group. And we are what we are today because of Dick Goldberg. He loved this community. I know he's touched us all, but in an overview, he saw the big picture. Before I came this morning, I did an internet search. I typed in characteristics of a great man. And 3 or 4 sites came up and all basically said the same thing. Here are some of the characteristics and attributes of a great man. Kindness, empathy, honesty, integrity, generosity, humility, selfishness. I'm sorry, selflessness. That other one fits me. In my opinion, Dick Goldberg checked every one of those boxes. Every one. We should be blessed, or consider ourselves blessed, that that man entered our lives. Dick, to me, was a friend and a mentor and someone I feel I should model myself after. He loved us all. We're going to look forward to hearing you all remember Dick in just a minute. But in the meantime, thank you, Dick Goldberg, for being Dick Goldberg.
Hi, my name's Gigi Kramer. Thank you all for coming. This wouldn't have taken place without you guys, and I really appreciate you showing up. Jan was generous enough to let me have Dick's collection of his books, most of them medical. This one was published in 1904. I was very pleased that she went ahead and did that. So, thumbing through some of his books, I found a poem with dog ear on here, and I wanted to read it. It's called When You Are Old. Anybody remember this one? Okay. When you are old and gray, and full of sleep, and nodding by the fire, take down this book, and slowly read, and dream of the soft look your eyes once had, and of their shadows deep. How many loved your moments of glad grace, and loved your beauty with love false or true, but one man loved the pilgrim soul in you, and loved the sorrows of your changing face. And bending down beside the glowing bars, murmured, a little sadly, how love fled and paced upon the mountains overhead and hid his face amid a crowd of stars. William Butler Yeats. Thank you.
I'd like to welcome up local color.
But here we are in Dick's huge heart. And because he loved music, and because many of you love music, and because that's the language we speak, we'd like to offer this up from Pete Seeger to all of you and to the earth around us. To my old brown earth, and to my old blue sky, I now give these last few molecules of life, and you who sing, and you who stand nearby, I do charge you not to cry. Guard well our human chain, watch well you keep it strong, as long as sun will shine, and this our home keep pure and sweet and green, for now I'm yours, and you are also mine. To my old brown earth, and to my old blue sky, I now give these last few molecules of life, and you sing, and you stand nearby, I do charge you not to cry. Are there our human shame? Watch well you keep it strong, as long as sun will shine, and this our home keep pure and sweet and green, for now I'm yours, and you are also mine.
Many years ago, when I had our first mountain disaster preparedness, our silent auction, and it was the first time that mountain disaster had one under Veronica before 19. And I was in charge of it, and I was in the recuperation of the spinal surgery. And I sat down with Dick, and we talked about it, and we talked about the medication. And they were over-medicating me, he said. And he said, Sherry, have you had this shit? First of all, I'm Sherry Edwards. That was a future for me. Have you had the shingle shot? And I said, no, I haven't. And he says, well, I'll take care of it. I didn't know what he meant. A few weeks went by, the pharmacy called me and told me that the serum was there and I could come pick it up. Well, I didn't know anything about it. I was afraid of it because it had to be refrigerated. So I called Dick. No, I said, Dick ordered it. Riverside for me. And I told the pharmacy to call Dick. Well, he called us, and we went over to his house. And he says, up at the top of the stairs, "Don't come up, Sherry. There are too many stairs for you. I'll come down then." We drove the truck. We laid the bed of the truck out. He laid stuff out, and he gave me the shot right there in front of his house. And I said, "Dick, I hope that your neighbors know you're a doctor." He laughed. He said, "Yes, Sherry." And that's one of many, many tales that I could go on and on, but that's the one I will leave the rest of you to talk about.
Hi, I'm Larry Kawano, and I just wanted to say a little bit about something that's a tad different. And it's still another amazing contribution of his, which is, years ago, at the Mile High, in its earlier incarnation, Dick and I would get together and talk science. And I really enjoyed that. But here's how Dick was different from me. He started inviting people to join us. And that grew into a science club that has continued to this day. Maybe it's been going on for 14 years, something like that. Moved from Mile High to the Gastronome and then went on Zoom during the pandemic and stayed there since. And I've taken over from Dick, and here's the legacy of what he did. Inspired me to do a lot more than I had ever thought. I started another science group in town that's lasted just about as long. And having come back here to Idyllwild a few years back, I decided I wanted to do more of these things. So I have a series going at Spirit Mountain. And I had gotten into doing sessions for a student who's now at Idyllwild Arts. He was then inspired to reopen Idyllwild Arts' observatory and had an open house one evening. I attended it, met some students who seemed to be very interested in science. So I'm currently arranging with Idyllwild Arts to do science presentations there. So yes, Dick got us all involved in just being together and sharing our insights, our questions, our curiosity, and knowledge about science.
I'm Kim Carlson. I've been here 20 years, and I met Dick very early on. He is the wonderful man that everybody else has described. I don't need to remind you. The expression, if you want something done, give it to a busy person. The reason is, it's the busy people who are the doers. Look at the group that's here today. What a caliber, a high caliber of people we have here who associated with and loved it. He has been an inspiration, as Larry has just said, to all of us, to be that kind of person. And I think that we should have a special award in our community. This is a place that visitors come and see, "Gee, everybody is so nice." When I first came here, I asked people who lived here what they liked most about Idyllwild, and everybody said, the people. It's a special kind of community, and we honor and respect people like Dick Goldberg because they represent the spirit of Idyllwild. And I think we ought to have an annual award of the spirit of Idyllwild. We can call it the Dick Goldberg Award. And it would be the highest honor our community can present to somebody because they are, like Dick Goldberg, people who work behind the scenes building, helping wherever they can. And I think we should have, I would like some support for that kind of idea, because I think that's what we represent. And as a community, I think we present an example to other communities that we should do that kind of thing and honor people, not for how powerful they are or wealthy they are or famous, but because of the quality of person that they are, that we respect and love.
All that you, as a community, can have a statue made to Goldberg.
There's an idea, a statue of the Goldberg.
Good morning. I wanted to have an opportunity just to share my appreciation of the Goldberg. And I don't remember exactly the details of how we got involved, but I know it was around and related to the establishment and the need for a community center where we could do things like this, get together, celebrate each other, the diversity of our own community, but with through the children's eyes as well. Because there's no mistaking the importance of a community that comes together, that interacts together, that shares their times and talents. I am very grateful and happy to do this because so impressed. He's one of the people who did. He was a man of action, and he was really impressed with the recovery awards and giving recognition to students. But I knew that when I met first Dick, he was contrasted. He was part of, wanted to get started, and started the Idyllwild Community Center. And I was introduced to him with a thing like Pete Tahquitz. And he met one day with her singer one evening at her, she's not singer now, excuse me, but Dick was really an amazing person. He was, he donated his time. He was innovative in taking action and deciding and doing things himself as well as getting those other people involved. He was curious about the opinions of other people. He really listened, and he could respond and interact with you about it, and he made you feel comfortable when you talked with him about issues. He was knowledgeable about how to work effectively to achieve something great. And it wasn't always as being the leader, it was being an actor in the game, taking action when you had a part that you were really interested in. He was generous. He was generous with his time, his affection, his knowledge, and he could speak to a lot of different subjects. His eyes would follow you around the room, even when he was just sitting for the last couple of years at events. And your eyes would connect with him, and light is bright, and you felt special just because he recognized you and pulls you into his world. Anyway, he was open to ways to make life healthier for themselves and for our community, which got him involved in the community. And he could laugh at himself joyfully, and he could laugh with you. He donated a lot of time, and he was maybe one of the best of the best. He was always there to lend a hand, to make you feel comfortable and relaxed, and to celebrate you and to recognize you as chamber. He gave so much to his community, and such a quiet man, and such a gracious man, and such a respectful man. And he is recommended to not only the people that are here in this room, but countless of other people. And he's left a lot behind, something that's really dynamic, structurally, visible in the community. We have a lot of people jumped on the wagon and helped to make possible the park, community center, concerts, and everything else that contributes to making Idyllwild a rich community. And for that, I feel grateful for having Dick and I.
My name is Bob Smith. I knew Dick for nearly 20 years after he moved here. We met up on Fuller Ridge one morning when he joined a hiking group that I had been going out with. And I had heard about him and observed him in large gatherings. He had spent his career in the big time, in a major city, major university. I had spent my career in the backwoods of the Intermountain West at state colleges. And so I sort of thought we probably wouldn't have anything in common. We got into conversation on that walk from Fuller Ridge over to Deer Springs that day. By the end of the day, it was obvious we shared a common curiosity about everything in the universe. And it turned into repeated hikes. We ended up, I don't know how many months of hiking together we did down through the years, all over these mountains, from a miserable day climbing out of North Fork through Blue Canyon, burn on a warm spring day, or hiking from up the Seven Pines Trail from Dark Canyon to Deer Springs in 2 feet of snow on New Year's Eve once. We got to know each other pretty well, and it just amazed me. For one thing, he seems to have discovered the secret of breaking the 24-hour barrier in a day. It's amazing to hear all the things that he was doing, and yet I think the key was when you were with him, you were the only person in the world. And I had a chance to talk with him a couple of times. The last time we saw each other, he came to Emmett. We had both moved off the hill. He came to have lunch with me where I live in Emmett. I mentioned that I was having a pain. I wasn't in my leg, and I wasn't able to walk as much as usual. He would not leave without going to my apartment, giving me a quick physical, ruling out all the worst things that there might be, and saying, well, I don't know what it is, but you better get to your doctor as fast as you can. But that was it. We talked on the phone a couple times after that. I was delighted that we had a chance to share our appreciation of each other before he was gone. And I really look back with tears in my eyes every time I think about him. Just an amazing human being.
My name is Walter Parks, and Betty and I got to know Jan and Dick when we were on the board at Iowa Cars, and we've socialized with them ever since. And Betty and Jan become very close friends. And I knew Dick and a few of his many classes. I did participate in science club. I never opened my mouth. That was very heady stuff that Larry was doing and still does. But the thing that impressed me about, again, the many facets of Dick Goldberg was the fact that when he talked, people listened. I've done my whole life going out there proposing things, and people are immediately against it. But in Dick's case, he had a quiet, non-confrontational way. It was illustrated by the earlier talk when he was confronting the county officials. He just quietly explained what was going on. In Idyllwild Arts, a number of years ago, they brought in some supposedly very fancy consulting firm to do a strategic plan. And after many weeks of interviews and costs, the plan was presented to the board. And they had contacted all kinds of graduates of the academy and had interviewed them. And so they presented all this stuff, saying that 65% believe this and 75% believe that, and presented all these conclusions. And at the end of it, Dick stood up quietly and said, in his voice, he said, what you have presented is not valid, because you have not done random sampling. You have particularly picked people, interviewed them, and then drawn conclusions. You cannot draw statistical conclusions in that manner. The study went on.
Hi everybody, I'm Martin Finch, and like all of you here, I love Dick, and my broken heart that he's no longer with us. And listening to this wonderful eulogy is teaching me a lesson in humility, something I can certainly work on, and Dick didn't need to. I have a feeling when I passed on and people will be eulogizing me, I won't have anything like this, and I don't deserve one. And I'm sure I'm the only person in this room who feels this way. Amazing guy. Incredible polymath, deeply curious, deeply compassionate, and a wonderful gift to the community. And so we have a lot to learn to live our lives as best as we can, like Dick. And I do want to talk for a minute about his incredibly, deliciously dry and wickedly witty sense of humor. And I know Dick wouldn't want me to tell jokes when I do that to let him below, because I think he wouldn't want anybody moping around. So this guy knocks on the door of a house, and a 9-year-old boy answers, wearing a dress and holding a martini in one hand and a cigar in the other. And he says, is your mother home? The boy says, does it look like my mother's home? So a taxi driver picks up a nun. They're driving along and says, sister, I hate to bother you, but I've always wanted a kiss from a nun. Kind of been an obsession. Is there any way to get a kiss from your sister? And she says, well, are you Catholic and are you single? He says, oh yeah. So they pull over, excuse me, nice big kiss. And he's driving, saying, oh, sister got a lovely kiss, but I'm feeling guilty because actually I lied. I'm Jewish and I'm married. She says, that's okay. I'm Kevin. I'm going to a costume party. One last joke I told Dick, and he said, here, let me tell somebody who's telling you guys this, he's a good clean jokes. There's a fellow named Boudreaux from Louisiana, and he's kind of a backwoods guy, but he does tend to get over on people. So one time Boudreaux's on a plane, and he's sitting next to a guy with a fancy suit with a lot of advanced degrees and tiny cufflinks, and the fellow's talking to Boudreaux. He says, you know, enjoying our conversation, Boudreaux, how about we play a game where I ask you a question, if you don't know the answer, you give me $5. But you ask me a question, and I don't know the answer, I'll give you $50. What do you say? Boudreaux says, oh, that's okay. So Boudreaux, how far is it to the moon? Oh, I don't rightly know. Never did go to high school. Here's $5. So Boudreaux, the other question for me, says, yeah, what animal goes uphill on 2 legs, but comes down on 4 legs? That's a tough question, Boudreaux. I don't know the answer. Here's $50. And by the way, what animal is it? He says, I don't know. Here's $5. Take over.
My name is John, and I was baptized is it in everybody's best interest? Dick Goldberg, I don't believe he's a Rotarian. I'm a Rotarian. We have 4 rules that we try to live by. And I believe Dick embodied those without any effort at all because it was him. So that's what I came to tell you, because I knew him very little. But he left a happy. So if everybody can just try to bring a little bit better life to everybody like Dick did every day of his life, that would be a great thing. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Chris Peralt. You may know me as Chris Singer. You're Chris Peralt now. I met Dick when he and I were involved in ICRC with Diane Cardinale, and we were assigned to start a program called the Speaker Series. He was very interested in people with all kinds of knowledge, and I was as well interested in those type of people and agreed to work with him, and that was such a rewarding thing. I specifically remember a couple of our speakers that we brought in. One of them was him. He did a speaker series and showed slides of, I don't know whether it was Haiti but it was one of his trips that he had been on and served people in a catastrophe, and that was wonderful. And the other one that I remember was when we had Royal Robbins up here, and they did a whole thing on the rock climbing community, and that was really fun. Dick helped me put that on as well, and I got to know him through that. And the thing that stood out to me the most was one of my favorite songs in the world is that song Humble and Kind. And if you haven't listened to that or watched that video, it's just wonderful, and that is Dick Goldberg, Humble and Kind. He's the epitome of humble and kind. Two other things that I want to tell you about that he did, because he was my quiet fan club. He was always just so sweet to me and kind, and came up to me whenever he could. I used to go back and forth before we got married for 10 years. I drove back and forth to Las Vegas to date my husband. And one time when I was there, I had back spasms and I couldn't move. I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't do anything. And I called him, because I had him in my cell phone. And I called him and I said, Dick, is there anything that you can help me? Can you prescribe? Because I don't have a pharmacy here. I don't have a doctor here. And Jan, his wife, was not happy that I had called, because she said, he is retired. He does not have insurance, and he just kind of, quietly put that aside and called in a prescription for me to help me get through that hard time. And then a few years later, I found out that I had an aneurysm in my heart, and luckily they found it before it popped. And I was down at UCLA having surgery, which was wonderful because I did not like a big deal made about me. And so I loved that I was so far away that nobody could visit me in the hospital, except for Dick did. Dick came and he surprised me, and he came into my hospital room in the ICU and he visited me. And I'm a better person because I knew Dick Goldberg, and that's all. I just wanted to pay honor to him. Thank you.
Hi there. Thank you very much. Rich Austin is my name. I'm here with my wife Sandy. We were neighbors with the Goldbergs. We lived 2 houses away in Cedar Glen. And I had the pleasure of seeing Dick almost every single day. He walked the 2 beloved black labs. First was Dylan, and then Rudder was the second. So I got to see him. We talked about everything, nothing, almost every single day. He was amazing. We all know all the cool, amazing things he did for the community at large, but I can tell you what he did for me. When the world lost its mind in 2020 and 2021, I lost my job. And I was on a schedule where I worked 3 weeks on and 3 weeks off. I'm back to that now. Well, Dick knew my schedule. On 3.5 or 4 weeks, he asked me, Rich, why are you still here? Are you supposed to go back to work? And I thought, wow, that's just not my schedule. This is amazing. I shared with him. I said, well, Dick, it's just one of those things. Got fired, and we're just going to see how it goes. And he said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, I haven't really decided yet. And he watched me do a lot of things on my house and on pretty handy, and he said, I've got some stuff at my house that needs attention. Would you mind coming down and having a look? I said, Dick, yeah, that's fine. I don't really need to do that. He says, no, really, I'm having such a hard time finding a handyman. In Idyllwild, everybody's busy, everybody's too expensive. Why don't you come on down? I said, okay, great. So I came down to the beautiful house, and he had plenty of work for me. And not only that, he shared me with the neighborhood. And I did that for 6 months and paid the bills. And really, it's because of Dick Goldberg that I was able to stay afloat while the world regained its sanity. But my favorite story of Dick, he was so smart, and he had such a great dry sense of humor. And most of you know that in Cedar Glen, Jan was our HOA president, taskmaster, totally. Everybody was going to follow the rules. And I'm a rule follower, so I love her. I thought she was amazing. But she was a rule follower. If you didn't follow the rules, she would have let you know. One of the rules was when you walk your dog, you had to be on a leash. And their first dog, Dylan, one day I saw Dick walking Dylan, and I'll be damned if that dog didn't have the leash in his mouth. He was hooked up on his collar, and he had it in a little ball, and Dylan was walking with his leash. And I looked at Dick and I said, that's amazing. How did you teach Dylan how to do that? And he kind of just shrugged it off. He says, well, apparently there's a rule here at Cedar Glen that the dogs have to be on leashes.
I'm going to make this really brief, but I think it might be a segue to the present too. So my name is Valerie Velez. I've lived in Idyllwild for a very long time, and I wanted to share kind of a couple of other dimensions of Dick that haven't been mentioned yet. So I practice Buddhism, and sometime, I don't know, this feels like about 20 years ago or so, Dick expressed interest in learning more about it. And the thing, my experience is that most people come to spiritual practice in Buddhism to get something for themselves, whether it's peace of mind or, have some lofty feeling of enlightenment or what. But the thing that Dick latched onto on my bookcase was a book called The Way of the Bodhisattva, which is about the embodiment of compassion. And that's what he wanted to learn more about. And I feel like that really speaks to him for everything that everybody's been sharing. And then the thing I think might be the segue for our conclusion is that Dick knew my mom from taking literature classes down in the desert. And my mom was a very curious, intellectually animated person, as was Dick. And so he saw her as really a shared spirit. You go to those classes, and they were in current his classes for years together and all. So he would always ask me about my mom, and when she came to the end of her life, and our family is ethnically Jewish, although my mom was a secular Jew, I did feel that she would appreciate having a mourner's prayer said for her. And really through Vic, who I initially asked to do it, I said, oh, Dick's, he would be more current to do it. And so Dick came to the funeral home, and all who was there was my daughter, my brother, and myself. He was there before we got there. This is only a year and a half ago. He was impeccably dressed. He had a gorgeous shirt and dress pants. And he said the Lord's Prayer for my mom. I just learned today, in looking at our little handout that we got, he and my mom had the same birthday. And I did not know that. And so he said, he did the Lord's Prayer, and he said, do you want me to stay? Because we were having my mom cremated. And he said, I'll stay with you or not. And kind of in consideration for my brother who didn't know Dick, I said, I think he can go now. But it was just so elegant. And I just appreciate it so much that he could do that for my mother. I knew also everyone else in the community for a long time, but those were just two special things that I wanted to share. Thank you so much.
I said, thank you, Valerie. That is the perfect segue. It is customary when someone of Jewish faith passes away, there is a prayer called the Kaddish. It's a mourner's prayer. And I'm, in the absence of having a rabbi presently living in Idyllwild, Stephen Morrison, you may all know him probably, was a good friend of Dick's, and he's agreed to read that prayer for us.
Thank you, Vic, and thanks to everybody on the team who made this day happen. So much more honored to be here to offer this prayer after what Val just told us. In synagogues anywhere in the world, every single service makes room, time, and space for what's called the mourner's Kaddish. Kaddish is a word that means holy. And I just want to tell you a little bit about the prayer, and do the prayer with some translation. That'll be it. It's not very long. And the interesting thing about the mourner's Kaddish, the prayer itself, is that it does not mention death. It does not mention grief. It does not mention loss. Rather, it directs the mourner's attention to God. And I didn't want to botch it, so I wrote a few notes about the prayer itself. It's a call to sanctify God's name even in times of grief and loss. It expresses a fundamental Jewish belief in accepting death as part of God's just and wise plans. This acceptance is seen as essential to living life fully and avoiding existential despair. So what I'd like to do is break it up a little bit. One more fun fact. The prayer is in Aramaic, not Hebrew. Aramaic, I'm no expert, but basically was, back in those days, a more vernacular dialect of Hebrew. And the reason that the mourner's Kaddish today remains in Aramaic was because it was designed to reach and invite even more people to be able to say it. And very much like what Val just shared, this prayer that we're offering today is not so much because it takes religiosity, but it is a nod to his Jewish heritage. And the idea, as Val was sharing, that when a Jew dies, somebody, somewhere, should say this prayer. Yikadal v'yikadash shnei ra'ah, ve'amad divrach yurteh v'avich malchuteh, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei t'chol beit Yisrael, ha'agalah v'zman karim v'hirim. You'll notice people standing, and I appreciate that so much. In every service, when it's the mourner's Kaddish, mourners rise. So thank you for rising. I can say what I just said means this. Glorified and sanctified be God's great name throughout the world, which he has created according to his will. May he establish his kingdom in your lifetime and during your days, and within the life of the entire house of Israel, speedily and soon. And we say, Amen. Yehei Shnei Rabban Baruch Ve'olam Amen. May his great name be blessed forever and to all eternity. Yibarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yibraham v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitalev v'yithalal shamei t'kudusha b'richu le'elam yinkol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata d'amiram be'alma v'yivru. Amen. Blessed and praised and glorified and exalted and extolled and honored and adored and lauded be the name of the Holy One, blessed be He. Beyond all the blessings and hymns, beyond praises and consolations that are ever spoken in the world, and we say, Amen. Yehi Shlomo Rabba Min Shemayim V'chaim, Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'yimru. Amen. May there be abundant peace from heaven and life for us and for all of Israel, and we say, Amen. And finally, Oseh Shalom B'Mamav, Hu Yaseh Shalom, Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'yimru. Amen. He creates peace in His celestial heights. May He create peace for us and for all Israel, and we say, Amen. Thank you.
Thank you once again for coming, and I know, even though you didn't want this, we had to do it. Thank you.
That's